Okay, welcome everybody to the next of our webinar series. This series today is about channel reports, and we're just kind of working our way through building a lot of good building blocks on how to use the software and hardware eventually here in the next few sessions. And this one here is going to be about channels reports. It's a function that has been is pretty darn powerful, and I know a lot of people use them, but we're going to go over a few things today and hopefully show you a few new ways of using channel reports that you haven't used before. So pretty good that way. So let's take a quick poll while we get ready to start on our introductions, and we start with one of these typically every time. Let's start with a poll of what hardware, what devices are you using? Go ahead and give us an idea of what hardware, what AIM hardware are you using, during your work with data. While that's going, let's do some quick introductions of who we have here with us. First, we'll start with Robbie. Robbie, what you've been here with AIM for 10, 11 years. You mentioned a little bit, in a previous webinar. Give us a quick introduction and maybe a little bit of what you're working on, some of the current projects you're doing during this bit of a shutdown we have right now.
Actually, we've been able to take the time for a couple of projects that we've had on back burners and things like that. So one of them is full dash removal for a side-by-side, the Textron Wildcat. So when you remove it, the ECU goes into like a limp mode. So it's my job to figure out how to stop that from happening, so we can do a full dash removal and provide our dash as a good substitute.
Perfect.
Hey Roger, can I interrupt real quick? I'm sorry.
Sure can.
It seems like the poll might have not have popped up because that's what the chat and the Q&A are full of.
The number, I'm seeing just a few numbers. Let me end the polling and let me see if it will allow me to try it again.
Yeah, I'll try that again.
Relaunch the polling. Continue.
Okay.
Allow and do this. See if everybody let us know in the chat if you see it now.
I can see it now. Yeah, I didn't previously.
The numbers are popping up. Yeah, I did allow the panelists to vote that time. Everybody got it now. Okay, perfect. Okay, Cameron, introduce yourself a little bit. Talk a little bit about yourself and what are your current projects during our little shutdown.
Hi, Cameron Bennett, and currently I am working on a production run for Polaris custom harnesses, and I'm also getting ready to start on a Trans Am harness as well. So, doing that from home and combination of the van and a couple days at the shop during the week. So moving some supplies around.
And both of you still taking tons of support calls and emails, I know, as well, right?
Yeah.
Keep you busy.
We obviously. both have the phones being routed directly to our place of work, our new place of work, whether it's our home or inside the van.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And Mike is here as well, and to keep me straight on the polls and such, right, Mike? So appreciate that. The numbers are much better this time. We're up there with our normal number. We're about 66% of you have voted so far. So thank you very much for that. We'll close that one down. I'm Roger Cadell. I'm the National Training Manager here at AIM, and my main job right now is these webinars, trying to make sure everything is going smooth. We've got some kind of cool things that I've been working on the planning behind the scenes, and we're going to have some real interesting co-hosts coming up that we're going to bring in some experts of using our software and our hardware, bringing them together and sharing their best practices of using the software and hardware. And those be starting next week. So keep an eye on your email. We'll talk about those co-hosts down the road a little bit. So it'll be kind of fun, I think. So let's end that polling and do that. Okay. Perfect. I appreciate it. I'm going to share my screen and show you Ray Studio 2. Let's bring that up. There we go. And we've talked in other webinars about taking a look at the screen, and last week's we talked about use the user interface and being able to look at high values and find those by clicking on the channel tags and seeing that the high speed was 112 and the low speed was 41.7, whatever it happens to be. But another really cool way of doing some pretty neat things inside the software is the ability to get a report that tells you all of the different laps, what were my high and low values, averaging. We're going to talk about all the different things that are available inside these channel reports. So what I'd like to do is show we looked at the speed. Maybe it's RPM. You can either have these min-max visuals on your screen all the time. I've got them where they only show up when I select them, but your screen at home might look like this all the time. So I can see that my high RPM for this particular lap, which is lap 8 down here, the high RPM was 65.47. If I want to see what the lap is for, the high RPM was for the 10th lap, I have to select the 10th lap. And then 65.27, and it's right here where the triangle is. So there's you can go through the regular measures graph and get some of these values, but it takes a little while. You got to dig through and you got to find them. So the channel report is just a fantastic tool that allows us to do all of that in one place. Takes a little bit of setup. Pretty straightforward. We're going to set up several of them here today, show you some cool little tips and tricks of working with them, how to make them work better for you, and then show you how to have 2 or 3 of them built and ready to go and stored in your user profiles to do different things. So the first thing that I want to do then is go ahead and just up here in the upper left-hand corner, we can come up and this icon right here is the channels report. And if we click on that, you'll end up with a channel report, kind of the canned one. I'll make it a little bit bigger here real quickly. I'm going to annotate my cursor so we can see it a little bit better where I'm at. Okay, so when you first open up a channel report, it might have 1 or 2 channels in here that may or may not be what you're after. But let's talk about the base system, the base setup of these channel reports. When you first come in here, it's going to show all of the laps that are active right now, that are active in the data that you have open. Right now, I'm only showing lap 4 through 12 down here in the bottom. If I jump into the lap manager and I would go ahead and I jump in, and let's say I'm going to enable some more laps, right? All of the actual race session here, session 9 laps 1 through 14. And then if I bring this back up to the front, we can see that now I've got run 9, lap 1. I can see what my minimum speed was and my maximum speed for that particular warm-up lap or whatever it happened to be. And then as I was coming in and the cool down laps and coming into the paddock area. So one of the kind of the cool things that I always do like to do is disable laps and make sure that those laps are out of any reports that I'm going to look at. So kind of a cool way, you can either come into the test database and lap manager and do your disabling of laps in this area, or another way that I like to do it is come down here to the bottom bar, and if you just right click on this test laps toolbar, you get an option, and one of those options is to disable that particular lap. You notice that I just disabled lap 9.1, and immediately the report has reflected that. So I'm going to, lap 2 here was another warm-up session. Let's disable that one. And then even lap 3 was the actual warm-up lap where just coming to the green flag lap. So I'm gonna disable that lap. And now I'm down to lap 4, which is a 2:41, pretty much a race lap. And then I've got this one last lap here, lap 13. If I hover over that down at the lower right, I can disable that lap. So I like to do that a lot with my reports, and channel report being one of those is let's get it down to the laps that are really effective in helping me find the data that I'm after. Another kind of cool trick that you can get down here at the bottom, you probably noticed when I right clicked, I had that disable lap function, but I also have show all laps. I can make them all active, or I can just show my best lap. So if I click on that one, it just jumps over to my fastest lap. That is a real cool shortcut that you'll use all over, many times inside the software. If you right click down here, you have that option of showing your best lap. So if you're trying to get to somebody's fastest lap real quickly, that's great without having to kind of hover over and start to look for the little channel tag to come up. Okay, so now that we have this, let's talk about, we've kind of thinned it down to the laps that are important to us. Now let's chat about, some of the stuff that we're seeing here. The first one is, of course, the run number and then the lap number inside of that run. If you had just cleared off your data logger, went out and just did the run with no warm-ups and anything else, the run number won't be there. It'll just be the lap number. So we're only showing these run numbers if you had multiple startups and stops of the car and the data system before you went out. So in this case, we're seeing the lap numbers. If I want to sort by different lap numbers, you can come up to this number header, and if you click on it, it sorts in ascending versus descending. So you can change these values real quickly. You can do the same thing with the time column. If I just click on it once, it sorts the fastest lap down to the slowest lap, and do it again, and it turns that upside down. The distance traveled, another place in the software that we can just do that same thing. So that's an interesting way of being able to sort the laps the way that you might want to. I'm going to go back here and sort those by the lap number just to keep it kind of clean. And this is the default way that the software shows it to you. By the way, this distance, this is the only place in a report, without having to do some math or some other things, that I can find the actual distance traveled for each lap. And think about that, these numbers are the actual spot where the driver drove the car, the driven distance, right? It's not just a lap distance, but if you see here that there's a difference in these numbers for every lap. And if you get some really consistent drivers, these numbers are actually pretty tight and pretty close together, which is kind of handy. So a handy thing to be able to see. If you get a big variance, all of a sudden somebody went way at the outside, you might understand why some of your averaging and some of the other things that's using this amount of information to do them. So this is a great place to look for driver consistency. Okay, the rest of this particular channels report right now, I'm showing all my active laps, and I'm only showing right now GPS speed, and I'm showing my minimum speed for each of these laps, and I'm showing my maximum speed for each lap. And let's say we want to add some things. Maybe our first crack at a channels report, maybe it's a vehicle health kind of a thought process, right? So maybe we want to add in our maximum water temperature, our low oil pressure, a place where you can go real quickly to find all these values right when you first download your data. And the way that we do that, the way that you optimize this graph for you, is to just hit the add remove button. You can also come up, and this little plus minus button up here does the same exact thing. So, but the add remove button, and you end up with this box. And when you first look at it, it's a little bit, you got to look at it for a second. Once you understand it, it works really well. It's all the different channels in your data set that you have. In here in the middle panel is a available report objects. These are the things we can add to the actual shown report objects, which is here on the right hand side. And so what we can do is, I've already taken the minimum and the maximum, which is what you're seeing here for GPS speed, because that's the channel I have selected. I'm going to put them all over here. We have a couple of options. We have 4 different options here. The double-headed arrow here, the double lines behind the arrow, takes all of your available report objects and pops them over into the shown report objects. The bottom one takes them all out of here and puts them back into being available, and there wouldn't be any. And then the one at a time, you can highlight the report object you want, and you can click on the arrow to drop it over into here, and maybe the max, and let's say average, right? I'm just going to click on that real quickly. You'll see that it very, very quickly updates the report, and you're off and running. I'm going to jump back in. I'm going to add them all, and let's talk about what these different values are. Okay. Let's maximize this guy out just so we can all see the entire report. There are some things here that you may not know about, so let's chat about them. And the first one, of course, is the minimum value. This is the minimum speed that this car achieved on each of these different laps. Virtually the slowest corner in the entire track will be the speed that was achieved, right? The next one is the time of min. This has always been a bit of a confusion for some folks, and that the time of min is what time since the beginning of the lap did this 41.5 happen. In this particular case, it happened 91.900 seconds into the lap, that 41.5 happened. Some people have thought is how much time did the car spend at the 41.5 miles per hour, but what that actually is doing is allowing you to find that spot on the, and because of this report, do some different things with that. Here is the distance that this minimum value happened, right? So you kind of see the trend there. Of course, we've got average, and what it's doing is taking the speed, taking this distance here, and doing the math and giving you an average, in this case, miles per hour for each lap. Okay. Average NZ, average not zero. That's something we're going to go into in some detail here, as we get into this a little bit deeper. I want to show you what that means and how to maybe use that. It's a function that's been added with it, the last couple of years in Race Studio, and a lot of people don't understand it fully. So I got a couple examples to show there. Of course, your maximum speed. This is where you can come in and take a look at the maximum speed of the car. This is the distance that maximum speed happened, or time, I'm sorry, time of max. Interesting here that you can see that these are jumping back and forth from 161 seconds since the start-finish line to 0.003 and 0.1. Interesting that the top speed on this particular track was right near the start-finish line. So a couple times he was achieving that max speed just past the start-finish line and just before the start-finish line. Kind of interesting. Same thing with the distance. It's showing the same thing. And then these three here are kind of interesting ones, and ones I had to learn a little bit about, right? Integral, it's kind of a calculus, kind of a term. Basically, what this is doing is it's adding up all of, in this case, the miles per hour, every data point, and it looks at it and it adds them up, right? So it's something that most people do not use, but that's what the integral is. The module integral is the same in this particular case because our miles per hour are always above zero. But what that one does, good for suspension settings, shock settings, some of those things, it converts all negative values into positive values and then tells you what the total of those data points are. And then the signal range is the difference between the high and the low of whichever channel. Our speed traces are not a great one to demonstrate these, but talk to me later, or hopefully that was a clear enough understanding of what those three topics are, those three particular outputs are. Typically, I have not used those very much, so I had to do a little bit of research to get up to speed on them. Okay. So let's say I'm going to go ahead and get rid of some of these GPS speed, all of these different report values, and let's build one like we talked a little bit earlier, maybe one that is quick and easy way to use at your vehicle health things, that that oil pressures and water temperatures. So I'm going to come in on the GPS speed one. I'm just going to pull them all over here. It's probably a little quicker, and let's add in the min and the max speed. We can do average too as well. The next one is RPM. The way that this works, you pick the next channel, and what values do you want to be reported in the report. So on RPM, typically, maybe we want to see what the maximum RPM was, see if there was any over revs. The maybe throttle position, that's not a vehicle health one. We'll come back to that one maybe in a little bit. Steering, battery voltage, what was our minimum battery voltage? Let's see if our alternator is holding true. Oil pressure, maybe we want to see our minimum oil pressures. Of course, you'll do all of these with whatever works in your data. This is water temperature here, temperature of the engine. I'd like to see what my max was for every lap, and so forth. Just pick the ones you want, and we can click on OK. And we notice we just changed this entire report. So now we've got our available laps. We tell us what our minimum maximum speeds were, our maximum RPM, our minimum battery voltage, minimum oil pressure, and maximum water temperature. Kind of a cool little tool here for quickly, as soon as you download, bring up this report, and we're going to save it as a user profile real quickly and show you how fast we can bring it up, and save this out and be able to take a really quick look at it and say, boy, do I need to work on anything before I start studying other analysis or changing those tires or whatever it is we have to do. So here it is. Let's go ahead and let's save it as a user profile. We talked about user profiles in a previous webinar, but user profile, we come in here and we have the little plus sign. We click on that, and let's give this a name, and we'll just call it a channel report. And it's vehicle health, right? Give it a name, something that'll mean something to you. Make sure you've got your new user profile with all these current settings and click on OK. Okay. Let's load our previous one, which was home dark. Let's just load that one. This is kind of back to a home base. And then let's bring up the channel report real quickly and show you one of the kind of the things that I wanted to show this to you specifically is when you build these things, they stack. The channel report is in here. If I come down and click on this tab, the channel report will come to the top. One of the things that I like to do when I create channel report or create user profiles is close all the rest of the things that are in the background, right? So let's close the GPS tab. Let's close the measures graph tab. We have our channels report, lap manager, and test database. We always leave those open. And then let's resave that, okay? Just by hitting the little floppy disk looking icon. Now let's go ahead and reload the dark home. Here is that. We can move around in it, do what we want. Come over here and hit either Control-2 or double click here, or hit the little double load button, double headed arrow, and then boom, we have our vehicle report, okay, for vehicle health. Let's say we have a different one we want to build. Maybe you want to check that, and you also want to do some quick driver performance things that you want a report that's set up for that as well. You don't have to build one and have a whole bunch of things in it. We can build individual ones, which makes it a little bit easier to see. So let's tweak this one. Let's adjust it, right? So if I come in here and I add remove things, let's take the RPM out, and the battery voltage was one of the things we had in there. We had oil pressure. Let's take those values out, and temperature of the engine. And then we're going to come back in, and maybe it's pedal position. Maybe we like to see what our average throttle position is, and any other things that you might want to put in there as far as your driving. You know, maybe we do want to see what our average RPM was. Yeah, let's do min, max, and average of our RPM. Again, whatever works for you as far as building these things. Okay, you could do lateral G's. You could do any number of things. So we've built this one. We like the way it looks. Let's save another user profile, and let's call this one channel report, and driver. Name it whatever which works for you, and click on OK. So now I'm just going to go through and I'm going to hit Control-1, and we're going to be in our home base. Kind of we got our GPS map off to the side. We talked about how to set all that up in our last webinar last Thursday. Watch that on YouTube if you want to get back up to speed. So we've got some channels here. If I hit Control-2, we can see now our vehicle health, and then hit Control-3, and we've got a channel report here that has our RPM and our average throttle position, and build away, right? Build some different things. You can save. User profiles are not just a single user profile for a certain function. You can save multiple user profiles for either different cars that you have part of your team, or different things that you want to do for individual drivers, or different needs of you as the individual driver. So keep that in mind as you're building your user profiles. We can build multiples of these and make this work for you as well. Okay. Let's show you another kind of a cool trick. I'm just gonna reload the vehicle health one, and then I'm gonna minimize this down. I'm gonna go ahead and bring back a measures graph, and I'm gonna resize this a little bit to make this kind of a different way of looking at it. And let's size our channels report down here to the bottom to show you a couple of other things that are really, really powerful with channel reports. I'm gonna bring that down to about that size so we can see all of the laps and yet still see all of this. Okay. One of the cool little tricks in the channels report that a lot of people don't understand or don't know is we can see that we have lap 8, which is our best lap. It's bolded in the report, by the way. I didn't mention that earlier, but the bolded one is your best lap. And we see that this RPM value down here of 6610 was the highest RPM that we've seen, and maybe that was an over rev. Maybe you see one here at 7200 or something, and you want to go, well, I'd like to go see what happened during that over rev. Is it something I need to be concerned about? So we can look over here and see it's lap 12. We can bring this cursor over here to lap 12, and we can go start to search and try to find where that RPM happened. Maybe it's right there, right? I don't know. But we could actually hit the RPM channel tags, and we could find, that yes, that is where it was at. We can come in and we can zoom in on that and determine what happened, right? I'm going to go ahead and pick my best lap again, just go back to the best lap instead of being on that lap 12, and show you that there's a kind of a cool little tool here. If I come in down here on any of these values, we can't do it on averages, obviously, but any min and max value that's in the channel's report, if I come down here and I just double click on that 6610, it does an interesting thing. What it does is it goes ahead and opens that lap, that it transfers from my best lap over and makes the new lap that I just clicked on active. So now lap 12 is the active lap. It takes the cursor and puts it right in the data, right where that particular value, in this case, high RPM. If I wanted to see what my maximum speed was, just double click on that. It just took and made my fourth lap active and took the cursor and put it it's right here at the end. You can't hardly see it on the video, but the cursor is right there at the end, and is that 114 miles per hour that it showed in the channel report. So where did the highest water temperature happen? Just double click on it. Water temperature is not one of the channels I have open. It puts the cursor right where it happened, but if you don't have that channel open, you could come in and you could turn on the engine channel, and then you would see exactly where that cursor happened. It happened to be right at the start finish line of this lap. It's at feet 0 and time 0. So the cursor's right here. Okay, that is such a powerful tool when it comes to using your channel report. Being the ability to see something, quickly go out and understand what happened, where it happened, why did it happen is a big thing that we teach in our seminars. What happened? Boom, the RPM was 6610. That was our highest. Where did it happen? Double click on it. It brings up that one, puts the cursor right there, and then understand the next question you always need to ask yourself is why did it happen? And in this case, it was just a little bit of an over rev right near the end of it, right during a shift. So, and it's not very high above the actual rev limiter. So all good. But that's that particular powerful use of jumping in and out of the channel report is pretty cool. Another thing that's kind of cool that you can do with this, let me turn off that engine channel, is you can come in and by clicking on this column right here, you can sort, ascending and descending of these RPM values, and it's changing the actual laps as well, right? The other thing you can do is by clicking on this little colored bar, you can they're all so big and so close that the histograms don't look so close, but we can see if any of them jump out. You can see the 12.7 is a little bit lower there. It gives you a visual of what these channels are as well, and you can take those back away just by clicking on those little colored bars again. Okay. That's a little bit about some of that hyperlinking from the channel report, and being able to sort and get to that information very, very quickly is super important on some of these values in the channels report. Okay, I'm going to jump in a little bit deeper, but first let's do a different poll and talk about your experience level with AIM software. Let's launch this one and see if it jumps up there for everybody. And let's see.
While that one's going,
it is going. Thank you.
I did have a question
Okay.
that might be good for a lot of the users, is organizing the channels report. So as you select different channels and they populate, is there a way that you can move them to better suit your needs? I've always just done it in a logical order. So, but maybe sorting them after the fact.
I'm kind of fighting the polling here. It's not jumping up for me. Let me see if I can relaunch that. Cameron, you have an answer for that question?
Well, so I use the channel report or the channel reports quite a bit, and I have the same answer.
There it goes.
As Robbie. I have always had to just load them in the order that you want to view them. So.
Oh, this order across the top. I see. Okay, I think I've got the poll going now. So, I agree. I believe what it does is it comes across in the order of the sort channels, but I don't know that for sure. But that's how I think it does.
Yeah. Just
Oh,
Just to
sorry.
follow up on the user profiles, if you wanted to organize them, I have a
Oh,
trick that I've
oh,
always used
sorry.
with resaving the user profiles to get the order in a way that I like. But maybe there's another format that you use, Roger.
There is not a good sort like on our I apologize if that was the question you asked before. I was fighting the polls. On the measures, we can sort the channels and come in and do a nice, easy change of the order of these channels that we look at, right? On the user profiles, I have not found a good way to do that. So the workaround that I think you're using as well, Robbie, is if I take this every time I save one, let's say I'm going to load home dark, right? So let's load it. And I just loaded that one. And if I want to save that one, I tweak a couple things. Let's, we could add in a different channel or two. But as soon as I click the little floppy disk, the little save icon, that one has now been resaved, however my changes were, and it goes to the bottom of the list. So what the workaround is, let's say you have 7 or 8 of them. Figure out which one you want to bubble back up to the top. Load it, save it. It's going to jump to the bottom. Figure out which one you want next. Load it, save it, and then you'll go through all of yours in the order that you want them to be. And as you resave them, they will come back up. So if, let's say I wanted report driver to be the next one where it was the bottom one, let's load it and save it. And then I'm going to load report vehicle health, and I'm going to load it and then save it. And what I've just done is I've ended up reordering these 3 to be the order that I want. Is that similar to the way that you do it as well, Robbie?
Yeah, that's exactly. I mean, ideally, I write them or I do them in the right order the first time. But should I make a mistake, yeah, I save, resave.
Perfect. And so that's a quick idea. And the poll is running along. We're doing fairly well. We're about 65% of you have answered this question, and let's end that polling and let's see. And I can share those results for you if anybody wants to take a look at them real quickly. There you go. And the while that is finishing up, the next thing that I wanted to chat about was the difference between when I bring up these add remove, you had an average question and you had a average not 0. And what I want to do is I want to change this this loaded one I have right now, and bring up the average versus average not 0, and everybody to understand how these things work and why it's kind of a cool tool using it the way that it should be used. So let me clear off some of these different values. I always leave speed in my channel reports. It's a money channel to me, and it's in all my graphs, it's in all my reports. It just kind of helps me see base everything and see everything. But on RPM, I'm gonna leave max on there, and I'm gonna bring in average RPM, and I'm going to bring in average not 0. We want to focus on this average not 0 piece and make sure that everybody understands how that kind of works. And then let's go down to, let's make sure everything else is off. I think it was battery was the next one. Let's take out all these out of here so they're out of our way, and we'll save another one here. Okay, let's make sure. Okay, so we've got GPS, we've got average RPM, we've got our average NZ or not 0, and our maximum. What we're doing here, let me resize this so we can all see. And again, I'm going to bring this down here, and I'm going to bring up. Always dangerous to grab that right up by that close button, right? And let's bring up our measures graph again and resize it so we can all see it. Let's leave it. That's a pretty good view right there. What we've got here is RPM. I've got our average RPM, and that is just the RPM of the average of the RPM signal for each lap, right? So the math is the channels report is just doing the math of what was the average RPM. And we're also seeing the maximum point, right? The trouble is let's say, and we can do this in any number of different ways, the uses of this. So I'm gonna show you one where I only want to see my RPM when my throttle position is greater than, say, 85%. We're going to create a quick math channel here. We're going to get into math channels in future webinars a little bit deeper, but I wanted to show you this, and so we built this math channel to give you an idea. Let's look at the math channel real quickly. I'm going to call it RPM filtered. And what this is just a quick math channel that the way I kind of read them is if the pedal position, throttle position, is greater than GT, 85%, show the RPM. If not, it creates the channel value of a 0. Another real popular way of using this is maybe you've got air-fuel ratio and you want to do some reports on it, and you really want your air-fuel ratios only when you're at full throttle or greater than 90% or something like that. It's a great way to filter out all that information on your air-fuel or your lambda sensor data that is all the time you're partial throttle or off the throttle, things like that. This data didn't have a lambda sensor, so I'm gonna do it with throttle, with RPM. I'm sorry. So this new RPM filtered channel, I created it. I've kind of scaled it the same as my RPM channel here. Let's go ahead and click on OK, and let's turn it on. Here is, let's resize this a little bit so they're about the same size. This RPM channel in blue is the filtered one. You can see that it's going up on the regular RPM channel, and it's at 0. If I put the cursor right there, I've got 0 RPM values on my filtered channel, and I've got 3470, and I've got a pedal position of 26.8. As this pedal position, let's zoom in on this so we can all see it really well. As my throttle position goes and starts to climb, when it gets above 85%, right in that area, you'll see that the RPM filtered, boom, pops up, and now it is matching the RPM itself, right? Filtered and RPM matches. So now we can start doing some different things in our channel report where we take our average, but we average without those 0 values, where this filtered RPM channel will be a funny looking averaging. So let's add filtered RPM. And let's bring in what values do I have in there? I have average and max. So let's bring in our max, and let's do our average of our filtered channel, and let's do our average if not 0. Virtually the same 3 items. Okay. So now we have our 2 values of RPM. One of them has been filtered with anything over 85% throttle position. So if you wanted to figure out, boy, what is my average RPM, but only when I'm actually driving the car extremely hard, flat out, I don't want to count all those averages when I'm off the throttle. It's taking all those zeros and calling them basically null values. And this is your average RPM when your throttle position is greater than 85%. Here is the exact same averaging, but it's using 0 as part of the averaging. You'll see that they're all quite a bit lower. And you can see that the average values of our RPM channel, non-filtered, don't match either one of those, because the averaging that it's showing there is, of course, of what the throttle pedal is at all times, right? The RPM is not being filtered at all. So the average RPM is 4770. Let's use the fastest lap, 4827. Average non-zero, because there are no 0 values in the regular RPM channel. Let me back out all the way so we can see it. There are no zeros, so of course those numbers are the same. But over here, we can see that, boy, when the car is at 85% or above, our RPM average is 4974. This value is taking out all of the turning all those into zeros. So just another way of being able to get to the data that you may want. If you want a little bit more information on some of that, let me know. I'd be happy to come in and with an email to me, help you work through some of those questions if that wasn't perfectly clear. Watch the video back as well. I know I went through it fast, but you can get a pretty good handle on kind of what it looks like. Okay, and then of course maybe this is another view that I might want to always go to. So I would come up to the user profile, I would add another one, and it would just be a channel report, filtered RPM. Yeah, however, whatever you wish to name them, and I'm going to click on OK here, right? And now let's go through our profiles again. There's my home base. There's my driver channel report, with just some of my driver values. And here's my vehicle health. It's got my low and high, batteries, RPM, water temperatures and such. And then I've got this one that I've created that's kind of a special one that is showing me what is my filtered RPM averages and some different things. Don't worry about the exact topic on that. It's just, again, a way to show that the power of the combination of all of our different functions, in this case, channel reports, and the and user profiles to save those where you don't have to take the time to build these channel reports each time. Build them with some of your data when you have a minute, save them as profiles, and boy, you can apply these things very, very quickly. Okay. Perfect. Any let's take a minute, Robbie, Cameron, if I don't know how many questions and answers you have been working on there, but is there any questions that are about specific to this that we can take a look at real quickly?
Well, it looks like Ian is asking, why aren't the max RPMs the same in the filtered and non-filtered?
If you look, it's an anomaly of this particular driving style here. Let's zoom in on this one right here real quickly, right? Here you can see that the max RPM of the filtered actually, at this point right there, is this little bump that's happening as the driver is going flat to the floor and is trying to cheat the putting in the clutch to go for the shift and is bringing the clutch in while the throttle is coming out at the same time, right? So you're ending up with this little bump up in RPM as the driver is going in with the clutch. It's not exactly great on the clutch, but because the RPM came, because the throttle position was below 85% when that RPM bump happened, the filtered is not showing the bump. That's why you're seeing a different number here. This is the numbers of full throttle RPM. Anything below 85% RPM, which this little false little bumps here are. So it's a great question. And maybe another way of getting rid of, if you notice this driver does that a lot, my son Andrew, you can see that almost every time that he does a shift, he's trying to get as quick as he can with the clutch and the throttle. And you get these little bumps at the end of every RPM, taken out with the filtering. Perfect, beautiful question. Thank you very much. You got another one there?
One of the questions that we got is it possible to use the channels report using multiple sessions, like using the same channels report and comparing morning session versus afternoon session?
Let's do that real quickly. I happen to have there's a qualifying session and a final here, so I'm just going to go ahead and open the qualifying session. So we have two sessions that are open now, right? And if you go into your channels report now, you can either look at the qualifying results. I didn't add that filtered channel into this one yet. I can do that. Well, let's do it since we got a second, right? So if I come in back into the math channel function, and I've got that filtered channel here in my final, that's one of these cool little steps we're going to take care of when we do a webinar just on math channels. I'm going to add that into my little cut, copy, paste box, go back to my qualifying run, and I'm going to paste that back over here and then click on OK. And you'll see now that the qualifying run has the filtered channel as well. And so AIM software uses these tabs all over the place. You'll see that there's a tab for each test. So I can look at the values of each one, or we can hit the test compare. And now it's a little bit, let me make this a little bit bigger so we can see the entire thing. And now we can see the two tests that we have open, in this case qualifying and the final, and see what the values were in the qualifying run down here below. You can see the header right over here. This is qualifying, and this was the final. Great question. Absolutely. In the channels report and virtually every function in our software, you can open up and look at data in just for each test or the compare. You'll see the same thing up here, Robbie, that I can look at just data from qualifying in the measures graph, just the squiggly lines. I can look at just the final, or if I hit the time compare bar, which is the test compare bar, it is the default way of looking at the data, so you can see both lines of data there as well. Good question. Anything else that we have before we jump out? I just highlighted in blue, but not the highest values. Where the question Scott is asking is, why are the highlighted values in blue? Let me get rid of qualifying just to kind of clean this up just a little bit. We have some here that don't have blue highlights, right? The 6610 is the high one, and the 6323 is the highest in that column. But some columns don't have some of them may not have a high value. Since I have hidden some of the laps, disabled some laps, and we're not seeing them. If the high value happened in those laps, that high value that's being marked is only being marked, it's being marked across the entire run, not just of the laps that we have active. And that's why sometimes you'll see that blue. You can also highlight, come into some of the settings for this, and you can actually change the minimum to be, instead of blue, you can make the minimum values red. There's a whole lot of things you can do in here as far as highlighting colors and different things inside of this format as well. It's the little wrench and the screwdriver icon when you have the channels report active. Lots of things. This is kind of a shared settings box. All the stuff here on the left side is shared for split reports, and then the numbers and the values here are part of the settings for the channels report, as well as the split reports for colors and text colors and sizes and some of that stuff. So this settings box fits changes of all the settings on both the split report and the channel report. Keep that in mind if you're going to play with that box. Okay, you got anything else, Cameron or Robbie?
Well, it looks like the last one is
now.
just any way to control the width. I've never been able to find a way to make it fit.
Yeah, often we can come in here and we can change and pull these, but what these are, they're auto fitting the width as far as the number of channels that you have. So
Right.
I do not believe that you can change the width of the channels report.
Add more channels.
Well. Yeah, add more channel. He has a lot of white space, he says in the question, and yes, it would. As we add more channels, it will just continue to get wider and wider. So I appreciate that. Let me go in here and thanks for the questions, everybody. Continue to, if you have questions that we haven't covered here, you'll see some contact information here at the end. So let's jump back into our kind of our closing couple of slides here, and then we'll also have one more poll that we'd like to do. Questions and answers, we just did that. We have as I bring up the last poll, future webinar topics. Let's launch that. Let's see if it. I've been having some struggles with it launching, so let me know in the chat box there below if it is launching. It does not look like it. No. Oops, there were some people that just started to vote. Let me continue it. Let me know again if it's jumping out there. And let's see, 0 so far showing for me. Nope, no poll. Let's end it again. Let's try it one more time. Let's relaunch that poll. Continue. I think I just saw it pop up, so that one, I think it's going to work now. Got it. Perfect. Thank you. While that is going, let's just chat up a little bit about some other training and support options that are available for you as you talk about future webinar topics. This is a big deal to us. We study this data in between these webinars, and the last 2 webinars have been have been driven by the answers to certainly emails to me, but even more so your answers that you're giving in these polls. So keep up answering those questions. It's very, very helpful to me. The customer support, I've mentioned it a couple of other times. The way I see this is AIM is a customer support company that happens to sell electronics, right? We're out there at tracks near you. We're doing these webinars and things like this. Give us a call if you have any questions with any of your stuff. There's an 800 number that's listed on your screen right there, 800-718-9090. Give us a holler, and if you have any questions, or look for us at a track near you once we get out of this mess. The LearnFast e-training video site. We have over 60 videos out there. Channel reports being one of the ones that we've done before. We're adding, of course, this one here is being recorded and going to go straight up there this afternoon. We're adding 2 of these new webinar videos every week, at least through the end of May. We'll see, probably continue them in some way after that. So visit our YouTube site and take a look at some of those videos that are available to you. Here's some contact information. I keep pretty busy with emails we're getting from these, and I love that. We lots of really cool questions come in from maybe tweaking some of the stuff we said, adding, throwing out some ideas to me, maybe things we're going to do in the future. So that's pretty helpful. So keep that in mind. I'm gonna end that polling right there. Let's share those results real quickly as we're kind of finishing up here for this one. You'll notice that data analysis is still our peak. That's been pretty darn true since I started doing on-site seminars as well. Everybody has this hardware and they really like it, and they're always yearning for more information on how to analyze the data and get faster. So that'll be a bit of what we're going to do. We're going to have some hardware things and stuff in the coming weeks as well, but a bit of a focus on data analysis, just because, as shown there, 68% of the answers ended up being that data analysis is a big part of what folks are looking to learn. So we'll keep that in mind. Okay. Again, anything else that you guys would like to add as we close this one down? Any final words?
I would love to see ECU topics get up there in the list, but it's just my own personal desire to discuss them with everyone. But it seems like the most important is getting faster, so I can appreciate the poll results.
We will have ECU protocols and some CAN information, some stuff that Robbie is just fantastic at as well. Cameron, you have any closing words as we get ready to call it a day?
I just appreciate everybody tuning in, and got some really good questions this time, and it's great webinar.
Perfect, thanks. Perfect. The next webinar is going to be at same time, 2 days from now, Thursday, April 9th. The next topic is going to be split reports. Kind of tied in a little bit, or fairly close to channel reports. So split reports, how to use those, how to maybe even build track maps that work well for the split reports, are the things we're going to be talking about on Thursday. So it'll be a fairly in-depth thing. I appreciate everybody taking their time. Hope everybody is safe and well, and everybody's families are doing good. And we will see you back here on in a couple of days, April 9th, Thursday at the same time for split reports. Thanks a lot, everybody. I appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon.